Today is May 25. My name's Tim, the BTWN guy, here for BTWN News. I've been looking for an update on Pastor Tim Stevens of Fairview Baptist Church. He is in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and he was arrested recently for not adhering to the health officials in Canada who say you can't meet in your church because of COVID. You need to, if you do meet in church, you need to follow all these rules. And he and his elders of his church found them to be unjust and not biblical, and based on the health conditions and the situation in Canada as he sees the science. He saw that he chose to worship without limitations, to not require people to wear masks, to not only have a very small number of people in his church, and he was arrested, just like Pastor James Coates and others. Tim Stevens was the third pastor in Canada arrested. So I've been looking for an update on him, and I found one. Pastor Gabe over at Cross Politic Ministry podcast, their group over there. I found it on YouTube, and I want to play it for you. Not all of it, just a segment of it. And if the folks over at Cross Politic don't like me sharing it, let me know, and I will remove this video. However, I think you will like the fact that I am showing people and pointing people to your content. Okay, I am surprised that less than 5,000 people have watched this tremendous interview with Pastor Tim Stevens. Pastor Gabe did a great job. I want to highlight it here and point them to your YouTube channel to go and watch the entire interview, which is over 40 minutes long. So this is extremely interesting to me. And the portion I'm going to begin playing right now is where Pastor Gabe asks Pastor Tim Stevens, what was it like leading up to the week that you were arrested? What was it like? What was going on in Canada in regards to COVID-19 and restrictions and lawsuits and the health department and the police and everything? So I'm going to play this. I might pause it for a little commentary. I might not, but here it is. Of course, yes, check out the link in the description of this video because you're going to want to watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, here in Alberta, there was an uptick in cases, and so they're predicting, a third wave, and it's going to lead to a lot of hospitalizations and other complications. And so the biggest alarm bell that's been going off is trying to save the hospitals from being overwhelmed. And so restrictions came to try to prevent that. And so churches were affected where the maximum capacity for a church, regardless of how big your auditorium is, was 15 people. For funerals. So one of those persons was dead, the maximum is 10 people. If you're outside, the maximum outdoor gathering is 5 people. And so it was really heavy-handed on the restrictions for the last number of weeks. And as my own family, we have 10 people in our family, so we can't meet with anybody outside. In Alberta, no one can come into your home. That's not allowed. Wow. And so it was like the lockdowns have been really oppressive and restrictive and really intrusive into the home, intrusive into the church.
Right.
And so we continued to gather and to practice hospitality in our home and to live our lives normally as we can as a church, because Christ is worthy of his worship, and we're going to come and we're going to gather. Amen. But what happened on May 6th is there was our Alberta Health Authority, their lawyers went to a judge and got an injunction because there have been restaurants that have been rebelling in our province as well. Right. And so they got an injunction against the restaurant, and also they tried to expand it to anyone who is acting in like effect to this restaurant by continuing to defy public health measures. Right. So essentially they got this injunction or restraining order against the province of Alberta, 4.5 million people, that anyone hosting a gathering in contravention to the health orders can be arrested.
Right.
And so we knew the heat had kind of turned up. And so I had written letters to my wife and my children, anticipating that arrest would be possible. But as the weeks went by, it didn't happen. On May 9th, the police were outside of our church. So this was not this past Sunday, but Sunday before. The police were outside our church, and they never came in, and they never came out of their vehicles.
Right.
And then I learned after the service that they actually pulled over a gentleman leaving our church who was visiting our church because they thought he was me, and they served him a copy of this injunction. And so they got the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And so when they were there this past Sunday, in the police mind, they thought they already had served this man the injunction. And so they were coming now to arrest me, having given me warning of that injunction.
Yep.
But what had happened that week before, we were preparing for what might be an arrest.
Yeah.
But yet earlier that week, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, it's a law firm here that is representing myself and James Coates and others.
Right.
They took our Alberta Health Authority to court to try to narrow that injunction to only apply to that restaurant
right.
That is named on there. And so James Coates and I were talking on Friday, and we're happy because now this meant that, we could breathe a bit easier.
And the judge ruled that order only applies to I think it was the coffee shop, right?
That's right. Only to the Whistle Stop Cafe. And so we were kind of breathing a bit easier, thinking, okay, we have another Sunday where we can gather together without being hauled off to jail.
Yep.
But when the police came after the service, they actually gave me a call on my phone first because I was loading my kids into the van and they were concerned about the kids. And so this police sergeant called me and he said, we would like you to ask your wife and your children to leave because you're going to be arrested today.
Oh my goodness.
And so I said, no, they're not leaving. Like, if you're going to come to arrest me, then arrest me. But my wife and my kids are going to be here. Wow. And he kept trying to implore me. He says, no, sir, you have to send your wife and kids away. It's going to be traumatic to them. You have to send them away. And he goes, look, go talk to your wife, and then I'll call you back in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I went and I told my wife, and I said, the police just called me, and they're going to arrest me today. And so she was kind of in shock, just processing what that meant.
Yep.
And said, of course I'm not leaving, and of course the kids aren't leaving. So, and so when the police officer called back, I said, they're not leaving, and if you're going to arrest me, you have to do it here. And so a bunch of police cars and vans all pulled into the church parking lot.
Yeah, criminal.
And that there's a video online, but I had a chance to hug my family, say goodbye to my wife, and talk to some of the men at church before they brought me ultimately to jail, to the remand center, which is a maximum security facility. It's not a good place. It's worse than a typical penitentiary or jail. And so I spent 2 nights and 3 days there. And
basically maximum security.
Yeah, the same kind of center that James Coates was in.
Why didn't they just take you into like an overnight jail? Why did they take you to maximum security?
Well, they brought me to a police station. They kind of booked me in, give me a phone call, and I was in a cell there. But they brought me over to the remand center, and I guess that is the protocol because this was supposed to be the action for being held in contempt of court. This court order is to be brought to the remand center.
Yep.
So whether you're a pastor or whether you're a murderer, you're brought to this place.
Wow.
And it wasn't pleasant at all.
Wow. And so basically, they as I understand it, and as you're telling the story, they arrested you illegally. They served the injunction to the wrong person, and then the injunction, even though they served it to the wrong person, still didn't apply to you regardless, and then they still arrested you.
That's right. And so I told that to the police officers. And he says, well, I have no knowledge of that. We'll take you in and that'll get sorted out later.
Wow.
And I think and even in my hearings that happened on Monday and Tuesday, it seems to be that our government is using this as an opportunity to try to crack down on anyone who is publicly standing against their health orders and questions about the legality or whether they should be doing this or not will be pushed off and answered later. But in the meantime, they're acting so unjustly to carry out these orders.
So when you had your hearings on Monday and Tuesday, did they just ignore the fact that you weren't served an injunction, and then secondly, that the injunction didn't apply to you regardless? They just ignore that?
Yeah, it was so hard because I I had a chance to call my lawyer on Sunday and just let him know where I was and what was happening. And I knew there would be a hearing upcoming. And so on Monday morning, when they brought me and they shackled me to bring me to the courthouse.
Wow.
And so as I'm sitting there in shackles, I'm asking to use the phone to speak to my lawyer. But because of COVID, the lawyer is not there in the courthouse. The judge is not there. And there's no capacity for me to use a phone to reach them. And so when they bring me into the courtroom, I'm sitting in the courtroom alone with the courthouse clerk. And the hearing begins, and I haven't even spoke to my lawyers yet.
Wow.
And so as they start discussing this, I haven't had an opportunity to fully explain, what happened the week before and about the injustice of this. And so all these decisions were being made, and it wasn't until I was actually brought back to the remand that I actually got a chance to use the phone and say, look, like this is what's happened. And if any, at that point, conditions were given on my release, and I said, I can't agree to those conditions that will prevent me from pastoring my church. And so it had gone online that I was being released on Monday, but I actually had to call my lawyers and put a hold on that because I didn't want any conditions upon me that would prevent me from doing what I already been doing. And I had to call my wife and explain that to her. And it was heartbreaking because at that point we thought our one hearing about release conditions was kind of one and done. And my trial date was set for June 16th. And so my wife and I were talking about not accepting these conditions, and that would mean that I'm in remand for a month. And we were both committed to do that for the sake of Christ and for his gathering of his church.
Amen.
But then thankfully there was another court date on Tuesday, and I had a chance to speak to my lawyers before that in order to convey some of this information to the judge.
And then, so did the judge release you because of the injunction and the illegal arrest? On what grounds did the judge release you?
All right, so if you want to hear the answer, go click the link in the description of this video. Fresh out of jail, Canadian pastor Tim Stevens speaks out. A very good interview. Lots of tremendous information there, as you can tell from that short clip. Intense, crazy, worse than I thought his arrest had been. Thank the Lord that he was released before the trial date, June 16th. And of course, pray for the trial. Pray for the other pastors who have been arrested in the other churches who are meeting in secret in Canada right now. Pastor James Coates' church still meeting in secret. Churches that we haven't even heard of all throughout Canada meeting in secret. Pray that this whole COVID, this enforcement of COVID health restrictions would end so that these churches would not be hindered from worshiping as they feel convicted that they are to meet. Pray for them. Good to hear from Pastor Tim Stevens. Thank you to the Cross Politic folks for allowing me to use this video. And go ahead and let them know over there that the BTWN guy sent you over there to check out the video. Till next video, of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out my website, btwnnews.com. Lots of content there. Like and share this content if you would. Until next video, take care, everybody, and may God bless each and every one of you. See ya.